say this. You can purchase tickets for $250 for the Spill the Honey dinner and program of Dr. Sherry Rogers and recent Congresswoman Brenda Lawrence at this website, spillthehoney.com. Spillthehoney.com. The event will be at the Athenaeum in Greektown on Monday, November 13th at 6 p.m. That's at the Athenaeum in Greektown on Monday, November the 13th at 6 p.m. And you can get tickets by going to that website, spillthehoney.com. And let me say one other thing, too. I want to say this poem about Spill the Honey. I call this poem Modeling Inclusion, a poetic couplet. Dr. Sherry Rogers' Spill the Honey Foundation is a righteous model for the whole entire nation. So, attend that, go to that website and go to spillthehoney.com. Oh, and one last thing I want to say. My cousin Jeff Telford's wife is home safe again, and I've been getting so many calls from folks who listen to me on the other show, on my radio show. I can't say it on this show, but they listen to me, and they've been calling me. They called me to say they were praying for her. They called me to say they were happy that they heard that she got home. She and her sister got home from Israel safely. They went to Israel at the worst possible time, because the day after they got there, the war started. So she was trapped there for a while. She came home a little bit early, but she is home. Betsy Telford is home. My cousin Jeff Telford's wife, Betsy Telford, is home, safe and sound. And if I may, one last thing I want to say before I introduce you, Lindy, because Halloween was yesterday, and in my Poets Corner in the downtown Detroit Monitor, there is a poem called Halloween Kittens. Halloween Kittens. So get the Detroit Monitor. It's still on the stands with my poem. I'm the DPSCD poet in residence, and that is my poem. Okay. This I also should probably say. Detroit Police Commissioner Willie Burton and I went over and talked over at Marygrove High School the other day, and I did my poetry reading over there to some very fine young kids who were very receptive, and the assistant principal Rebecca Adams was very hospitable. So I want to give a shout out to them as well. Okay. We are now.
One second. Station ID. You're watching the Dr. John Telford Show, live streaming on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, and Twitter, and other top social media platforms. Like, follow, share, comment, and subscribe. Thank you for watching Wjzz Cool TV, the coolest station in the world.
And also, I just want to mention, that my new poetry book is out. And last week I held this up to the wrong camera because it didn't get photographed. So I'm holding it up to this camera. I'll hold it up to this camera too. It's Athletes, Activism, and Apple Boughs, a Detroit poetic epic. So you can get this on Amazon.com. You can get it at Barnes & Noble, and it's my new poetry book, which I hope that you will order. If you order it, and if you call me and make an appointment to see me, to come and I'll sign the book for you. If you do that, my telephone number is 313-460-8272. So order my book, Athletes, Activism, and Apple Boughs. And we have got Lindy Lindell in the station today, and we're finally getting around to introducing him. So Lindy, welcome to the John Telford Detroit Show with co-host Gloria Cunningham today.
Thank you, John.
So, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I just, as a young boy, grew up watching boxing on television. My father was a chief engineer for the CBS affiliate in Norfolk, Virginia. He took me down to the weigh-in. That was my introduction. A fighter by the name of Joey Giardello. Who
Oh yeah, great Joey Giardello.
subsequently became middleweight champion.
Sure did.
Was
But you know, a Detroit fighter fought a draw with him. And you know who that Detroit fighter was because he did this to my nose. My nose is not totally straight.
This is new to me. Tell me.
Well, who am I talking about? What Detroit fighter fought a draw with the great professional middleweight champion of the world from Philadelphia, Joey Giardello? Do you know who that was?
You?
No. Oh, God, no, I wasn't a professional fighter. No,
I have no idea.
there's no way I ever could. A fighter who beat me, actually knocked me out, the only fighter who ever did. His name was Henry Hank.
Oh, yes.
Henry Hank
Yeah.
fought a draw. He fought a draw with Joey Giardello only a couple of years after he beat me in the Golden Gloves, in the 52 Golden Gloves, in the middleweight division. It was at that same weight that
Well,
that he fought
yeah,
Joey Giardello,
Henry Hank-
160 pounds.
Yeah, Henry Hank was one of the very few who came out of Detroit that one could really authentically call great.
He was a great fighter.
He had to go on the road because there weren't sufficient promotions in Detroit for him to engage in.
That is correct. He was one of the truly great fighters and probably one of the least publicized fighters.
Yeah, he was a road fighter, and he probably fought in New Orleans and places like that more than he did Detroit.
Yeah, he took a few too many punches. You know, he ended up, I think, in a sanitarium. He passed.
Yeah.
So tell us more about your how you got into writing about boxing and your interest in the sport.
Well, my father was the chief engineer of the CBS affiliate, as I say, and he more or less. I was the only twerp at the weigh-in of this fight in 1955, the first fight that I went to, and had my pictures taken with both fighters, Joey Giardello and Al Andrews, who,
I remember Al Andrews, good middleweight.
an unsung type guy who I found out in more recent years had such a lust for smoking that eventually it killed him. And
Smoking and boxing don't get along.
yeah,
No way.
yeah. And so Joey Giardello from Philadelphia came in, and this fight was beamed on the CBS affiliate in Norfolk, Virginia, but nationwide as well. And it was the first nationwide fight beamed from Norfolk, Virginia, so it was quite a big deal. And I got to meet, among other people, the announcer, Jack Dries, who was the announcer for the St. Louis football Cardinals. And that was a big kick because I was just a little twerp, and when I was introduced to him, he was in a folding chair, and he unfolded himself, got up, all 6'5" of him, and shook my hand. And you got to understand that at age 10, that has quite an impression upon you because,
Oh, yeah.
you know, I was like nothing in my home schoolyard, and then to have a kind of national personality get up and shake my hand was quite flattering, and it was great. But then, of course, I met Joey Giardello and Al Andrews, and prior to the fight, and then watched the fight itself, which was a very good fight going into the last round. It was close to an even fight, and Giardello knocked Al Andrews down in the 10th round and won a close unanimous decision.
Well, we had a fighter who came out of this town who probably is regarded, not probably, is regarded by the experts as the greatest fighter that ever stepped into the ring. And his name, of course, was Sugar Ray Robinson. And my father, who was also a professional fighter, he turned professional when he was 16 in this city back in 1918, I think it was. He's born in 1902. He took me to see Sugar Ray fight when I was only 7 years old. And that was the first fight he ever lost. He lost to Jake LaMotta. Sugar Ray lost to Jake LaMotta in that fight. And then he fought him about 4 more times and beat him every time. But I took my father to see Sugar Ray fight one of his last fights. And he was fighting a fighter named Wilf Greaves out of Canada.
Oh, yeah.
And Wilf Greaves was doing a pretty good number on him because he was much younger. And then all of a sudden, Sugar Ray unleashed that right hand, and Wilf Greaves hit the canvas and was out. Let me ask you this, because I went to school with a guy who was a very good friend of mine, Denby High School, and his name was Bob Dietz. He and I were classmates. Matter of fact, he was a very, very fine fighter, and probably a natural super middleweight, but there was no 165-pound division then, because we're talking 1952. But Bob Dietz, they called him Ducky Dietz. Did you know Ducky Dietz, or did you hear of Ducky Dietz, or did you know anything about Ducky Dietz? Because we lost him a couple of years ago,
Yes, we did. Yes, I did. He was, I'm not going to say true gentleman necessarily, but a very, very nice guy one of the few people in my lifetime who offered to buy me dinner one time.
No kidding.
That doesn't
sound like Ducky. You didn't buy too many dinners that I recall.
Well, he did because he knew I was going to do an article on him.
Oh,
so
well, that was another
that
thing.
changed the scenario. Yeah.
Ducky, when we were about the same age, when we were both kids, one time we were sparring, and he loosened my teeth right through my mouthpiece. I mean, he could really hit. And I'll tell you something about Ducky Dietz. Rocky Marciano managed him, but it was when I think he was trying to make a comeback, and if Ducky had ever really trained when he was a young guy, which he didn't, I think Ducky could have been the world light heavyweight champion even at 167, 168 pounds. He was that good. He had a murderous right
175.
cross. Yeah, well, yeah, he'd have fought it. He'd have had to fight at 175 because he couldn't make 160. He could, when he was a mature, grown man, he could not make 160. Ducky actually used to train fighters at the Cannon Recreation Center over on the Finney campus when there was still Finney High School was over there, and that recreation center was over there. And Ducky, when he was 41 years old, because we were the same age, I was 41 years old. Jerry Catalina, who grew up next to him on Chelsea Street, my old teammate at Wayne State, Ducky asked us to come to the fairgrounds and see him fight this heavyweight out of Philadelphia, whom he had lured to come and fight him. No one else would fight him. I mean, none of the light heavies around here were going to fight him, or the middleweights. So this heavyweight from Philadelphia came and fought him at the fairgrounds in a charity bout that he was fighting to make money for the Cannon Recreation Center. And I'm supposed to be interviewing you, but I want to tell you this story. He he was fighting this 195, 200-pound heavyweight, undefeated heavyweight out of Philadelphia, and the heavyweight was beating the hell out of him. And we were wincing. Jerry Catalina and I were right at ringside, basically wincing. I remember Ducky was also running a bar over on Gratiot at the time. He had a sawed-off shotgun under the bar. He was running that bar. But anyway, all of a sudden, in about I can't remember the round. It was an early round, third or fourth. Ducky caught him with that murderous right cross, and that heavyweight was unconscious before he hit the canvas. I never saw anything like it. If Ducky had trained when he was a young guy, there's no doubt in my mind he would have been one of Detroit's world champions. But anyway, that was just a story I wanted to tell you.
Well, of course, the other part of that equation is that he had to have some kind of manager. and I'm not sure that he was very receptive to being managed.
No, well, Ducky wasn't receptive to anybody managing him. Ducky was he was a kind of an independent guy, and he wasn't always, doing all the right stuff either, to tell you the truth. But when he was a kid, when we were kids. But I think Ducky was handled for a while by Rocky Marciano. I think Rocky Marciano actually handled him for a while. But I don't think...
it wasn't so much, it was Lou Duva who held some sway over Marciano, and the two of them came in to work with him, to sign him up and take him to... They met at a Detroit bar that I'm still having trouble remembering the name of, but they converged on the bar, and they did a little silly road work on the side of the bar, which I've got a picture of, and
Wow.
it's a nice keepsake.
Yeah, yeah.
So, but he he wasn't the manageable type, I don't think.
Ducky was not that, and I can remember one time a guy challenged him, wanted to fight him. This was when Ducky was a professional, and Ducky Ducky accommodated the guy, and unfortunately he killed him in a fight. And his hands are deadly weapons, but he got off because it was self-defense. That's what I recall. My memory gets kind of bad, but if I recall correctly, that actually did happen to Ducky. But he was. I believe Ducky Dietz could have beaten any light heavyweight on earth if he'd been appropriately trained when he was a young guy. Anyway, let's talk a little bit about what you're doing, because that's what we're supposed to be doing. Joe Louis Arena was torn down. What memorable memory regarding Joe Louis Arena do you have, and what are they doing now to commemorate Joe Louis in Detroit, since the arena that bore his name has been torn down?
Well, it's a real shame, and I don't know that any place in the country has a situation where you build a huge new building, Joe Louis Arena, and within a few years, it was razed, and I don't know what the story is behind that.
I don't either.
But a multi-million-dollar, biggest stadium around, blah blah blah. Now it did have its defects.
The steps are real steep. I remember that.
I was going to say
Yeah.
that the steps, one had to not have a drink of beer
Right.
before ascending those steps.
Yeah.
Another thing is that they did not have bathrooms on every level. You're going to some kind of an event, you're going to have, and you're spending half a day there, you have to go to the bathroom, and they don't have a bathroom on your level, so you have to go to the basement or something like that, and you would have thought that would have maybe that had something to do with the inconvenience and the reason why ultimately it wasn't a friendly place to go.
Joe Louis and I had something in common that wasn't anything to do with boxing. I boxed before I became a track man, but we didn't. Joe Louis played the violin. Did you know that?
Vaguely.
Yeah, he played the violin. He learned to play the violin in the Detroit public schools, just as I did. When I was 7 years old, I learned to play the violin in the Detroit public schools. Joe Louis was a violinist, but then he was supposed to be going and taking violin lessons, and instead of going to take the violin lessons, he went to the gym. And when his mother found out about that, she wasn't real happy, But
yeah, that's one of those anecdotes that may or may not be exactly.
yeah, I don't know if it's true or not.
Yeah.
I never met Joe Louis, but you know what? My cousin did. My much older cousin, Jack Daniels. He was one of my Scottish family. He was my father's elder sister Margaret's son. Jack Daniels. He was well named, by the way, Jack Daniels, because he loved Jack Daniels. That whole family were alcoholics. They're all born in Scotland. Jack Daniels hung out with Joe Louis. They were very good friends, and he had a lot of Joe Louis stories, and I think that was one of them. So that may have been a true story, the violin story and the skipping.
Well, it certainly gets enough play, and um, it makes for a good anecdote. I don't know if it's true either. There are a lot of people who say that they knew Joe Louis before he moved, but it doesn't really matter.
Well, he came back. He moved, but he was back in Detroit a lot.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, he came back here all the time. He had a lot of family here. In fact, Tom Barrow, is his nephew. My good friend Tom Barrow. We ran against each other for mayor. And we became friends at that time. And Tom boasts about the fact that Joe Louis was his uncle.
Well, yes, Joe moved around a lot, and a lot of people don't know this, but he would always come back to Detroit. He came back for the 35 World Series, but he did live other places for extended periods of time, namely New York. He was best friends with Sugar Ray Robinson in New York. Of course, he had years and years in Vegas.
The old story is Sugar Ray, when he was younger and a kid, used to carry Joe Louis's bag at the gym.
Yeah, I don't know if that's true.
I don't know that either.
Yeah.
All I know is that Sugar Ray Robinson was probably, even Muhammad Ali, who pronounced himself as the greatest, has been quoted as saying that Sugar Ray Robinson was the greatest. Muhammad Ali modeled himself after Sugar Ray Robinson because Muhammad Ali had the speed of a middleweight, and in his style was very similar to Sugar Ray's. He modeled himself after that. But I'm not the boxing expert. You're the boxing expert. We're supposed to be asking
I'd
you.
I'd like to
these
throw
questions.
in one little tidbit about Sugar Ray.
Sugar Ray Robinson?
Yes.
Yeah.
When I got out of the military in the mid '60s, he was still fighting, and way beyond the point that he should have been.
Right.
And
Well, he was still fighting. I remember in 1955. 1955, he knocked out who was the fighter, the Mormon fighter.
Fulmer.
Fulmer, yeah, with one punch he caught Fulmer,
yeah.
and that was when he was in his 30s. I think he was about 35 years old. He was still beating the best middleweights in the world in his 30s.
One of the great knockouts of all time. Especially since it was caught on television. But in 1964 or 5, he was winding down his career, and I was back in Norfolk, Virginia, going to the fights when they had them, which was infrequently.
When did he beat Wilf Greaves? Was it in the 60s? I think it was. Because I saw that
Must have
fight.
been when I was in the military.
I took my dad to see that fight, and I don't really remember when it was, but Wilf Greaves was the Canadian champion, and he knocked him out.
Yeah.
And he was like 40 years old or thereabouts.
Well, he was all but done and still fighting, and he fought a couple of times in Norfolk, Virginia, in the mid-1960s, and I went to one of those fights, and I had the privilege of being able to sit up there where the judges sit, and so he fought this bartender from Texas who claimed, according to the publicity in the papers, that he'd been wanting to fight Sugar Ray for a decade or more, and of course that's just publicity.
Yeah.
And he was no more equipped to fight him than I would have been. So Sugar Ray knew what was there. He toyed with him for a round or so, and in the second round, he hit the guy with a left hook that made this guy groan all the way down.
Whoa.
Kind
of what Joe Louis did to Max Schmeling.
That was the end of that encounter. Yeah. But it was great to be right there at ringside, right next to a judge, watching that.
I always wanted to meet Sugar Ray. I never had that opportunity. But he was something. I had a picture of him on my wall when I was just a little kid. You know, I had his picture on the wall, Joe Lewis's picture on the wall in my bedroom over on Haverhill
They
Street.
were certainly great friends, and more than one person in New York said that they were best friends, and they both were entertainers. Sugar Ray couldn't sing, but he could do everything
He
else.
danced.
Yeah.
He actually had a dancing
Oh, yeah,
troupe.
he was a great dancer.
Yeah.
But he tried singing one time, and that was the end of
That
his
was
career.
the end of even the singer. Okay.
But they were buddies, and you know, a woman who has since died told me that they were best friends in the 1940s.
Sugar Ray and Joe
Lewis.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Joe Lewis. Joe Lewis, you know, interesting comparison. You know, Joe Lewis and Muhammad Ali. Now, Muhammad Ali was big. Muhammad Ali was fast. Joe probably at his best was under 200 pounds, but he defended the World Heavyweight Championship 25 times. I think isn't that a record? I don't
It
think
is a record,
anyone
and
ever did that.
I think we can say that that will never be broken, partly because you can't feasibly have a heavyweight championship fight probably more than one a year. Now, when Marciano came along, he fought comparatively infrequently.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
But Joe it was back in the day before television, and so you know, it wasn't such a big deal. Although he made it a big deal by fighting in Yankee Stadium.
Joe never fought Archie Moore, I don't think.
No, he did not.
I know Marciano did. In fact, when I was department head at King, this is in another life, it was back in 1968, 69, we brought Archie Moore to King to talk to the kids. He was very entertaining, too.
Great guy. I had the privilege of, I took an assignment which was to pick Archie Moore up at the airport for, he was going to be and was a cornerman for George Foreman.
Oh, yeah.
And by the way, a little tidbit about Foreman.
He could hit. Couldn't that man hit?
Oh, boy. I interviewed him, and I kept asking him about his age because he was well into his 40s.
At the time?
Yeah, when he fought at the Palace of Auburn Hills. He opened up the Palace of Auburn Hills to boxing, by the way. And so
he was the Olympic champion in 1964, if I recall correctly.
Yeah, and this was almost 1980.
He stuck around forever, and he was knocking people out forever, too,
Yeah.
just because he had that incredible right
So
hand.
I was asking him about his age, and the second time I asked him, he says, "You keep asking me about my age, and if you do that, I'm not going to invite you to my next birthday party."
Okay, let me do station ID. You're watching the Dr. John Telford Show live streaming on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, and Twitter, and other top social media platforms. Like, follow, share, comment, and subscribe. Thank you for watching WJZZ Cool TV, the coolest station in the world.
Thank you, Gloria Cunningham, for the station identification in your usual melodious voice. Democrat Tiffany Tilley is running for Congress in Michigan's 10th district against Republican John James. Now, Tiffany is on the State Board of Education. She was with me on the 14th District Executive Board, the 14th District Democrats. She is a very canny lady, very knowledgeable, very liberal. Vote for Tiffany Tilley. And her email to vote for her is votetiffanytilley@gmail.com. That's TIFFANYTILLEY. Vote Tiffany Tilley @gmail.com for Congress. we are interviewing Lindy Lindell, the prominent boxing writer, and he's got a new book coming out. Talk about your new book, Lindy.
I call it 2/5 of a book because it's really a picture book with captions, and sometimes I get to tell stories in those captions.
Well, a book is a book, so don't say it's 2/5 of a book. It's 5/5 of a book, with the pictures and all of your wise words. So
Yeah.
tell us about it.
Well, it's called Heavyweights in Detroit, and I'm going to put what is probably going to be a very expensive photograph on the cover that has both Muhammad Ali and Joe Louis on it.
Great.
And so they...
Action shots or just headshots?
No, just a shot of them together.
I would love to, I don't know if you can do this, but I'd love to see you have a picture of Joe Louis putting Max Schmeling on the canvas, and then superimpose or have next to it a picture of Muhammad Ali in one of his greatest fights. Maybe the Foreman fight. I don't know. That's just an idea.
I wanted to get something of both of them together, and so there aren't too many pictures of that.
Oh, good. Yeah, that'd be good too. Yeah.
And so it was difficult to. It is difficult to get such pictures because there's so few of them together. But what I wanted to do, I got to tell this story because
sure. That's what you're here for.
Yeah, there's a story that's not very well known, but now perhaps older people will remember that Muhammad Ali was very outspoken about the Vietnam War.
Oh yeah, he opposed it.
Absolutely.
He said, "I ain't got no quarrel with them Viet Cong." Well, that's exactly the way he said it and what he said. Yeah.
And so he resented.
No Viet Cong ever called me the N-word. He said that too.
Yeah, well, Joe Louis had served honorably in World War II, and Ali, he did something, and everybody out there, you can look this up on YouTube. Ali's held a special press conference to deprecate Joe Louis.
Yeah, I heard about that. I did hear about that, and it disappointed me because
Yeah.
I was a big Ali fan.
Yeah. Well, the story is this. Again, it's on YouTube, and you can see all 10 minutes. It was a very short press conference, but all 10 minutes, and he blasts Joe for defending the U.S. going into Vietnam. But here's this part of the story that is generally unknown. They were both tied to Vegas, where the king of Vegas was Frank Sinatra.
Yeah, who got Joe Louis a job as a greeter in Vegas.
Yes. And so, obviously, Frank Sinatra, admiring and being friends with both men,
He got caught in the middle.
he conspired isn't a good word here. He got them together in a room where only the three of them there.
Wow.
And so when they emerged from the room, we don't know what Frank Sinatra said, and we'll never know unless he's got a diary that's going to come to light. But Ali
Changed his tune?
changed his tune. He put his arm around Ali, not only like this, but he draped his arm so that his elbow was pointing out, and his arm was on the front of Ali's chest. I mean, on Joe's chest. And so that you didn't have to say anything. You saw the picture. I'm going to, again, I'm going to spend some money to put that picture on the front of my little book.
Wonderful.
Well, you only have a second, Doc.
Oh,
I don't
okay.
know if we're going at the usual time, but you got 2 minutes for the usual time, but I don't know if he's going to let us go a little longer because it started a little later, so I'm not sure
Okay.
about that.
Well, I
But you got
guess
2
he'll
minutes.
probably holler, when
Yeah.
we're done. Yeah, Joe Louis and Muhammad Ali had very dissimilar personalities,
Absolutely.
to say the least. But
And I've got a Sonny Liston story if you'd like.
sure, go ahead.
Sonny,
Another fighter who could hit like a mule, man.
yeah, and really a great fighter as well.
Oh yes.
Tremendous puncher. But
Yes.
at any rate, he came from Arkansas.
Hmm.
And the first time he came to Detroit as a fighter, he came alone. The guys who were supposed to come with him, frankly, he was mobbed up, or I should say that he had a mob guy behind him, and he sent him to Detroit, and for whatever reason, his trainers, put that word in quotes, didn't come along with him. And so he was early in his career. He had only had a few fights, and he fought, and he sustained a broken jaw. And so he was disoriented. He had no one with him, and he was on Woodward Avenue in front of a coffee shop late night, really wondering what to do. And a friend of mine who recently died, Billy Goots, who was totally into boxing, drove by. He saw Sonny Liston. He took him to Doc Bennett's office, who had an office fairly near where the African American Museum is now. And he took him there, and of course the venue was the office was closed, but Doc Bennett left his office open, or at least the waiting room. He left that open, and that's where Sonny Liston spent the night, on a couch. So the next morning, Doc Bennett came in and treated him. But the interesting part of the story is that that was also Joe Louis's doctor. And they made that association. They became friends, particularly in Vegas, after both of them had retired. And that's, of course, where that's where Sonny Liston had his drug problem and turned up dead one day.
Yeah, I remember that. That was very sad.
Yeah.
Some people say that he was murdered, but I don't know that was true.
I
think
don't
he
know
just
that it was murdered
overdosed.
either. A very good writer by the name of Bruce J. Friedman wrote an article
Oh, yeah.
in
I remember.
Esquire magazine that
Yeah.
said that he had 2 needles in his arm when they found him
Yeah.
after 2 days.
Yeah, yeah.
So
We're going to have to wrap this up, I
yeah.
think, because I want to make sure. We've been interviewing Lindy Lindell on the John Telford Detroit show with co-host Gloria Cunningham, the boxing writer Lindy Lindell. We got to have you back on because there are many other boxing stories that we could engage in.
and we didn't get to talk about Joe very much.
Well, we can do that next time. We're going to do it again.
And Tommy Hearns.
And Tommy Hearns and all the great fighters, Hedgeman Lewis, all the great fighters that came out of Detroit. Chuck Spicer, who was a Denbyite, by the way, Denby High School. But let's have the lead out.
Okay, you've been watching the John Telford Detroit Show with Dr. John Telford and co-host moi, coming to you on WJZZ Cool TV every Wednesday morning at 10 o'clock. Also streaming on YouTube and Facebook. Contact Dr. John Telford at 460-8272. That's 313-460-8272. Get one or all of his great books on Amazon.com. You can email him at drjohntelfordedd@aom.com. AOL.com. That's Dr. John Telford, EDD, at AOL.com to sponsor or appear on his show or to get signed copies of his book. Thank you much.
Thank everybody for listening. That was a very good show, Lindy. And now let's head to the DYC. As soon as we get this tape, I got to ask Roger to
Is that yours?
email me the
Yeah.
tape.
Yep.
Yeah.
And we're off to the DYC.
One thing is they all look the same, don't they?
Yeah, I've dropped mine so many times.
Get by here.